towel 4 years ago, and he didn't, and thank God he didn't, because I don't know where we'd be if he wasn't the candidate for governor. So we're thrilled to have him here, and it's wonderful that he's here supporting Tim. I mentioned to somebody that I had the honor of introducing the governor tonight, and the individual who couldn't be here said, you know, from one Republican to another, please tell that governor he is doing one hell of a job. Governor, you are doing one hell of a job. You're a credit to the party, and thank you so much for being here. Everybody, Governor Charlie Baker.
So earlier today, I sworn Ken Green as the head of the MTA Transit Police, and Sergeant Dan O'Toole was the master of ceremonies. And Sergeant Dan O'Toole introduced me by saying, and the next speaker is Governor Charlie Baker. So I walked up to the mic and I said, gee, Sergeant O'Toole, I sure wish my parents had been here to hear that. That was so special. I gotta tell you, Rob, coming down here and hearing that introduction, where'd you go? You just disappeared into my mind. There he is. Having heard that introduction, Rob, I really wish you'd been with me earlier today. That was a home run, babe. Let me just start, first of all, by thanking all of you for being here tonight to support Tim. Tim is doing a terrific job up on Beacon Hill. And he is exactly what we need in this day and age, which is a seasoned professional, law enforcement experience who can come up to Beacon Hill, speak eloquently and articulately to those issues, and also represent the people of this community. The other thing we have with Tim is he is one of the biggest and scariest people. And he's promised me that by the end of my 4 years, I'm going to have a haircut just like that.
We'll take that picture.
But seriously, we've had a heck of a year. I mean, my wife and I, it's just about a year ago, for all intents and purposes, it was November 4th that the election was held, and by this time we were fully into the throes of the transition. And for us, it's been very reflective to think about what's happened over the course of the past year. And the big lesson for us, I really think, comes down to just don't be surprised when you get surprised, because stuff just happens all the time. A lot of you don't expect or anticipate, and it just kind of comes out of nowhere. And you just have to be ready to play the hand. And I think in some ways, the people down here, especially last year, know this better than anybody. Because 20 days after we took office, it started to snow, and it just snowed, and it snowed, and it snowed, and we never thought it was going to stop. And it was literally 25 days worth of snow out of 30 days, 9 feet of snow in 4 weeks. Nothing like anything any of us had ever seen before, and the Cape got hit as hard as any part of Massachusetts. Although my Lieutenant Governor, Karen Polito, would point out to you that Worcester got hit pretty hard too. And it gave us this first big test with respect to our ability to work collaboratively with cities and towns, to work collaboratively within and among state agencies, and do the best job we possibly could, helping people figure out how they were going to get to work and get to school, pick up their kids, and get out of the end of their driveway. And I think for the most part, people liked what they saw. It was a very no-nonsense, just do the work and get it done and focus on that. Very business-like approach that we brought to the task at hand, and I think a lot of people in Massachusetts appreciated that. But that was, you combine that with the way we handled the budget deficit, and the way we dealt with the health connector, and the way we're dealing with DCF, and some of the other problems that sort of became ours when we showed up. And I think people have been pleased with the fact that we haven't really engaged in what I would describe as sort of the political cheap shot of partisan rhetoric, and instead really just focused on getting stuff done. It's very important to me that folks like Tim return to Beacon Hill, okay? It's very important. Because let me tell you, folks, the more we can do to create that competitive climate up there, that sense that there are two teams on the field and they are going at it every single day when it comes to fiscal discipline, local aid, support for cities and towns, and what I would call the blocking and tackling of government, we are going to be better as a Commonwealth if everybody on Beacon Hill believes that it's a real ball game up there and that every single vote counts and that there's a game to be played. And by having folks like Tim and the other folks from the Republican side of the legislature that came down today to support Tim, that's how we get from here to there, and that's how we keep up on our game, and frankly, keep the other folks on their game as well. This, of course, is a very special time. You can tell because Teddy's really decorated the place up in a pretty good way. What I really want to know, Ted, is did you hang these or did you have somebody else do it? Angie. Oh, that figures. Okay. But that also means it's a time of year when we should all be thankful. Take a moment to reflect and be thankful for what we have and how we've been blessed. And I can tell you that Rob mentioned the fact that my wife and I did this back in 2010 and lost, and we came back and gave it another shot in 14. And it was one of the hardest.
How'd that work out, Governor?
See, it worked out okay. It's really funny. You get 49% of the vote. You win the next morning. You don't even win the night of the election. It's 49 to 47. And I swear, I haven't met 10 people who say they didn't vote for me. But you may have noticed that there have been 3 polls done in the course of the past few weeks, and in all 3 of those polls, the Baker-Polito administration has had a 70 to 74% favorability rate. And I tell you, that's because people like the no-nonsense, just do the work, take on the tough challenges, and get stuff done approach that we're pursuing to Beacon Hill. People like that, they appreciate it, and it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican or Independent. That's an agenda you can sign up for, and I think that's a big part of why we've been successful, and that's exactly the kind of approach that folks like Tim bring to this task. I do want to tell one story that actually has nothing to do with anything. There are a lot of very interesting days in this job, okay? But I remember back in March, I had one of those days where I had 12 or 14 meetings and I was racing from one to another, and I came into my office to meet with the Medal of Honor Society, which had their annual gala this year in Boston for the 3rd time. And we're the only place they've ever come 3 times. It's pretty cool. But I shook hands with all of the folks coming in. We sat down and I said, look, you're the Medal of Honor Society. You represent some of the most important values that we hold dearest and truest in this country, and we'll do whatever we can to help you and your colleagues when you have your convention here. And one grizzled guy at the end of the table said, I'd really like a helicopter ride. So we have the meeting, we agree to take care of all their various issues and concerns, and then there's pictures. And so everybody comes up to take a picture, and that guy comes up and he shakes my hand and he says, I'm serious about that helicopter ride. And I said, yeah, I know, I wrote it down. So he's looking up at me and he goes, what made me think of this is, there's a lot of tall people here today. So he looks up and he goes, you know, you're really tall. Yeah. And he goes, you know, you remind me of a guy I used to fly with. We called him Too Tall. And I said, that's funny. There's a guy they used to call Too Tall. His name was Ed Freeman, who was a helicopter pilot during the Vietnam War. And at the Battle of Ia Drang, and I said at the Battle of Ia Drang Valley, and I know something about this, the medevac helicopter stopped flying into the battle zone because it was too dangerous, and he kept flying in and flying in and flying in to deliver supplies and to take wounded soldiers out, and he probably saved dozens of people's lives that day. And he actually got the Medal of Honor for what he did that day. And I said, I think his commanding officer that day was a guy named Bruce Crandall. And so the guy looks at me and he goes, right, Bruce Crandall. That's what I said to you when you came in. That's me. commanding officer that day, and people wanted to nominate him for the Medal of Honor, but he said no. He said, I was the commanding officer, I had to go. The guy you should nominate is Ed Freeman. He didn't have to. So they nominated Freeman, he got the Medal of Honor, and all was great with the world. And then 5 years later, they came back to Crandall and said, you know, for all you've done and for everything you've been as a soldier and as a patriot and all the rest, we really think you should let us nominate you for what you did in the Iodine Valley. And he thought about it for a while, and he finally agreed to let him do it, and of course he got the Medal of Honor. He is truly an American hero and a patriot, and exactly like so many people who serve this country, I wasn't doing anything special. I was doing what the person next to me would have done. I was just doing what I needed to do on behalf of my brothers and sisters. And I literally looked at him and I said, you know, this is kind of a crazy job. I never really know what's going to happen from one day to the next. But my opportunity to stand here and shake your hand and thank you on behalf of the people of Massachusetts and this great country for all you've done is one of the most special moments I've had since I've taken office. And so he looks at me and he goes, so does that mean I get my helicopter? The Medal of Honor Convention came to Boston, and we actually used Black Hawk helicopters to take them out to visit a bunch of high schools to talk to kids in high schools and middle schools about patriotism and character and discipline and teamwork and all the stuff that they're really all about. And I think as we head into the holiday season, I think it's great if we can all spend a minute to just remember those men and women who won't be home for the holidays, who are going to be spending their holiday, your holiday, our holiday in harm's way, and thank them for what they do every single day. And again, thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, our Governor, Charlie Baker.